Yes, it's What a Boast, a celebration of Reeves and Mortimer. Please welcome your hosts for this podcast, MJ Price and Paula Wiseman. Hello and welcome to Quad a Boast, a podcast dedicated to the work and genius of Reeves and Mortimer. My name is Matt Price. I used to present the MJ Price radio show, and I've founded the Reeves and Mortimer Depository of Curious Stuff Facebook group.
And I am Paula Wiseman, the creator of the Divine Comedians podcast.
Joining us today, we have an actor and comedian who has appeared in several comedies and dramas, in TV, in film, theatre and podcasts. And if you've never listened to Brian and Roger, the podcast, then do yourself a favour and do so. But, brace yourself. He has also appeared in a number of shows with Jim and Bob, all of which we shall endeavour to discuss in detail during this conversation, and most famously, of course, on Shooting Stars as award-winning burger van proprietor Angelos Epithemiou. Please enter the Novelty Island paddock, Dan Skinner.
Hello.
Yay!
Hello. Hiya, Dan. Hello, Dan.
Hello. Hello. Lovely to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I don't know what else to say, but those are my sincere. I don't know what the word is. Very inarticulate. There we go.
No, we're very pleased.
The sincerity comes across.
No, we're very pleased to have you on the podcast, Dan.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start off by going back in time a little bit. Obviously, the majority of our listeners will know you as Angelos Epithemiou. So, how did it all start for you? Were you an actor initially who went into comedy, or were you in comedy and then you went into acting? How did it all begin initially?
I was sort of nothing really. I had one of those sort of like pools where I just thought, well, I'm going to end up somehow doing acting or comedy, and I didn't really know how to do it. I went to university and studied theatre studies, which is pretty much sets you up for nothing, other than just sort of getting you into the world of like performing and stuff. And whilst I was there at the university, they had a module in the third year for stand-up comedy. Middlesex University is quite famous for that, and the culmination of studying stand-up was doing a 10-minute spot down at the King's Head in Crouch End, which is one of the oldest comedy clubs in London, I believe. Joe Bohr has just made a documentary about it. And so I got a taste. I mean, I'd never set out to be a stand-up, and I'd never really watched stand-ups apart from Steve Martin, who I thought was very funny, but it wasn't anything I'd ever aspired to be in. Vic and Bob is what I aspired to be in, but there's no courses you can go on to learn how to do that stuff.
Yeah.
That's like that. When I first watched, Big Night Out in 1991, that was like what I would imagine watching punk rock or hearing punk rock for the first time, where you just go, oh God, how have they managed to get this stuff on telly? This is amazing. And it really is like sort of, completely era defining stuff. And when I saw that, I was like, right, well, that is what I've got to do. I want to do that. But obviously, no idea how to even go about doing that. So when I did my stand-up thing, I did that. And then when you do your final stand-up performance, you do it in front of your friends from university. And basically, it's a popularity contest. So you're popular, they laugh. And, I had quite a lot of friends there. So I had a good time, I had a good one. I thought, I've nailed this. And then you get out in the real world and you try it, and people just, you realize you have got no idea how to do this. So I sort of jettisoned that off. I was like, I'm not going to do this then. It's too hard. So I went to university, and so I'd been to university, and I came out, and I didn't really know how I was going to do any of this stuff. Ended up going to Germany, did TIE, Theatre in Education, for 10 months. Came back from there, ended up with in Ken Campbell. I don't even know Ken Campbell, but he was like
legend.
Sort of theatrical genius, impresario. I sort of ended up doing his 24-hour play, The Warp, And then when I was there doing that, I met a load of other people, and we decided to put a sketch show together. And then that sort of changed and morphed, and we ended up putting a sketch show together with other people. Went up to Edinburgh, did our first Edinburgh in 2004, and I think that's probably when you can sort of legitimately say I've started doing comedy, you know. Before that, it was all just sort of mucking around. I didn't even know what Edinburgh was. When we started putting a sketch show together, the other guy said, "Oh, we should take this to Edinburgh." I'm like, "Why? Why don't we just do it in the pub?" You know. So, and then I found out, you know, that I had heard of this Edinburgh Festival, but it hadn't made much of an impact on me in my life. But yeah, so we ended up going there for 2004, 5 and 6. And then I went back in 2007. And then I was mucking around in 2008, really, not really knowing. I'm going into quite a lot of detail here. I hope you don't.
No, you go into as much detail as you like.
You ask whatever you want. You know, stop me whenever you want. I was in 2008, and I was doing the Armstrong and Miller show, and I'd met this character called Angelos, this real guy, and I was just doing impressions of him to everybody. And
was his real name Angelos?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
His real name is Angelos Epithemiou, but I changed it to Epithemiou. Anyway, I was doing an impression of this bloke, and I was doing the Armstrong and Miller show, and Lucy Montgomery was doing that show as well. And I kept badgering her with Angelos and just sort of leaving notes under her door and, like, you know, bothering her, basically. And I don't think you get away with that now. And she said, Bob Mortimer would love this character. And I'm like, Bob Mortimer? Oh, my God, it hadn't occurred to me. So I made a little video of me being Angelos on the end of my bed. I sat there again, and I said, Mortimer, it's Angelos here. This is getting ridiculous now. I don't know why you don't want to give me a job. It's not like I can't do nothing. And then I made this little video, and I wrote on a napkin in pencil saying, to Mortimer, here is my video at last. Please watch it and give me a job, from Angelos. Obviously, he'd never met me before, never knew anything about me. And I just scribbled all over the envelope and sent it to him. And miraculously, he opened it and watched it, and then rang me, and then and said, yeah, it was Lisa Clark, the producer of Pet Productions, rang me and said, Bob really likes your video. Do you want to come and meet him? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So I went and met Bob, and he said, well, what do you want to do? You know, I said, well, I want my own show with all my own characters on it, but no one's going to give me that. So if you give me 5 minutes on one of your shows, that would really help me out. And he said, well, Shooting Stars is coming back.
Wow.
I said, well, I'll do that then. And then he came to see me at a gig that I did down in Brighton, sat right in the front row. It was a 3-hour gig, and I was on stage for most of the time. I guess he just wanted to see if I could be in character for the whole time. I could, and longer.
And under that pressure of him sitting in front of you.
Of him sitting in front of me. Nothing could throw me off. And then he invited me into the rehearsal room. And then when I got to the rehearsal room, there was all the tables were laid out like Shooting Stars. Jim Vick was there, Matt Lucas was there, Ulrika was there, Jack D was there. I'd never met any of these people. I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
And then Bob sort of just wandered up to me and said, Dan, this is going to be really tough for you because we all know each other.
Yeah.
We're all mates, you know, so, you know, you've got to chip in where you can, but that's what it will be like, you know, on the show. So, you know, you might as well get used to it. Anyway, so they're all sat there sort of doing their stuff. And then I thought, fuck it, man, if I don't say something, then I'm just going to go into my shell. So I just slammed my hand down on the table. And I said, have we started this yet or what? Because I have got to go. And then And then they all sort of started looking at me and asking me questions. And then Jim started firing a few questions at me. He says, "What's the safest place to stand away from a badger?" I said, 3 feet. He went, "Correct." And I thought, oh, okay, all right. We're going to be all right, I think. And they just went on like that. And then at the end, Bob said to me, "All right, we'll be in touch." And then he phoned me up and said, "Yeah, we want you to do it." And that was like getting a phone call from, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
So you've grown up following the career of Vic and Bob through the 90s.
Hey, honestly, they're like, they make me howl with laughter. They all their shows have made me howl. Like Bang Bang, The Smell of, Catterick.
Yeah.
It's all just made me laugh like a drain. I just find them consistently hilariously funny, and I still do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to be on a show of theirs, in my own character, and for them to say "do whatever you like" is both very, very scary and also a brilliant opportunity, and not just an opportunity, but just like fucking cool.
Oh yeah,
really cool. And so yeah, I just felt like I managed to get to a place I never imagined even possible. And it was brilliant because they were lovely, lovely guys, very creative, very funny, artistic, and just really generous, Bob's one of the rare people in this business that will send the lift back down, and find other people and haul them up again.
So, I mean, was Angelos still very new when you first interacted with Bob? Was he still very new?
I've been doing Angelos. By the time I met Bob, or send my tape to Bob, I've been doing Angelos for about 7 years.
Right.
So he was well established. I could speak Angelos, which means I could basically, any question that anyone asked me, I had an Angelos reply. And I just knew the character inside out, and that's what they love, people that can live those characters.
Must be like being bit possessed, when you go into character.
Bit possessed, or it's just firing up another side of your brain,
Yeah.
Just the part of your brain where the sensor is completely off, and you just say whatever you want. There's no restraints or anything, but you don't tread over the line. You don't step over the lines or anything like that. You still do it within the character. It's actually very, very difficult thing to explain.
You ever surprise yourself when something comes out of your mouth as Angelos? Where'd that come from?
There's moments though even on Shooting Stars, there are moments where I said stuff and I was like, oh man. Yeah. Had a couple of sleepless nights, even though everybody had laughed. I just think, that's a bit cruel.
Yeah.
So I do try and, I try and keep an eye on that when I'm doing live stuff, and if I think I've stepped over the line, I'll go in and apologise, or I have to, because for my own sense of self,
But character comedy, becoming a character, it's a big undertaking, isn't it? So I mean, it's no kind of, you're not getting up on a stage as yourself.
I guess it is. I don't know any different. So
yeah.
It's not like, I mean, a big undertaking for me would be for me to get up on stage
as yourself.
That would be much bigger undertaking. I always prefer playing other people. I just find it, more fun, more interesting, and also it's more, you're pretending to be somebody else, and you have to write their lived experience, and that's because if it's me, it's just my opinions. And I don't know how many people want to hear those. There's enough comedians out there who want everyone to know their opinion. Yeah. And I'm just like...
I remember when the publicity campaign for your first series of Shooting Stars came out, and Bob was being interviewed and saying, there's this guy, because giving nothing away that this was an actor or a comedian, there's this guy who runs a burger van, who's won a member of the public on every week. And I've met him, and he's at an award ceremony, and he's going to come on, and even your name in the credits was as Angelos Epithemiou, so there was nothing giving it away. What was the reaction to that?
They're brilliant like that, Bob. He loves he'll buy right into it, and
Yeah.
and he just wants to fool. He wants to fool the public. It's like a magic trick, I don't know what you call it, but it's yeah. I mean, once they're in, they're in. It's great.
Yeah. How did the other members of the team, like Ulrika and Jack, did they buy into it straight away, or did it take them a while to work out what you were?
Everybody has to work out what was going on. But I think, certainly Ulrika, she's used to sort of being baffled on that show, and she's very good at doing that, so she understands what, the weirder it is, the more interesting it is for the audience to watch.
Yeah.
And Jack is just prepared to, he's prepared to play along, do anything. He understands, he understands the deal as well. So everyone was very generous, and I was allowed to just, do whatever I want, really.
When you did the variety showcases, Angelos's variety showcase, was there any given free reign on that, or did Bob or Jim give you any ideas?
That was all Jim came up with those, really.
Yeah.
And then I was instructed as to what to do, and I go, yeah, cool, brilliant, and they're all very funny, really.
Yeah, I love the cat crept in. Yeah,
that's my one.
Oh, was it?
Cat crept in is mine. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, no, but there's a lot of improvisational stuff to what you do. A lot of what you do is improvisational. Even the stuff you do with Alex, obviously the podcast.
That's
yeah. Incredible.
I mean, that's about as improvised as you could possibly get. We don't plan anything.
No. Even the songs, total smut fest.
It's a smut fest. Yeah. That's what it is, since we put it behind the Patreon wall, because we just thought, well, we don't, we're catering for people that want to hear this stuff.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about what we say, really. We can really go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's all completely improvised, and that is about making each other laugh. Really, we just, if you go into certain areas where you go, I think this is going to do it, and I think the audience really like that. They find that good fun. But yeah, I mean, all the live stuff, you have to be prepared to be able to improvise.
Yeah.
Because I ask a lot from an audience. I ask quite a lot of interaction, and so if you're going to do that, then you have to be prepared to get thrown a curveball. Although it's funny because there's a section in my show where I ask for audience interaction and what have you, and people pretty much shout the same things every night, thinking that it's like no one's ever said. Hey, honestly, it's just. And so I've got a load of stuff up my sleeve.
What's in your bag?
I was going to say.
Yeah, all of that, of course, which is something I obviously never, ever hear. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's, that's what makes live performance, certainly live comedy, it's what separates it from doing a play, for example, where you can't, there's no room for that at all. But that comedy is a brilliant, visceral relationship between you and an audience, and it's up to you how to time something. It's up to you, how to play a moment after an audience has done a certain thing, and that's really, as a creative comedian, it's a thrilling thing, really. It's a very hard drug to kick as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But I mean, even how did the bag thing begin? Was it just you wanted to have a prop?
The thing was like, so I'd met this guy, Angelos Epithemiou, but the look actually is based on my grandfather, who used to dress pretty much like Angelos with those trousers. I mean, he was a very smart man, my grandfather. So it's not, he wore a tie a lot of the time, and I have just exaggerated it and uglified it. But he was a smart bloke, but he would wear an anorak. It's just that my anorak hasn't been washed or ironed for a long period of time. He would wear a tie, but my tie is down to my knees.
Yeah.
And my trousers are too short. His weren't, but it's his colours. It's his, and he would carry a Sainsbury's plastic bag around quite a lot of the time with his car keys in, stuff like that. So yeah, and the glasses were, he had those glasses as well, those sort of NHS glasses, which I can't get hold of now, so I'm having to use my own ones. But my ones snapped, my Angelos glasses snapped. So but that's where the look came from, basically.
Bit of sellotape.
Yeah, Jack Duckworth style.
Yeah.
Going back to Shooting Stars briefly, were there any memorable guests that you can think of? I mean, I was watching the episode the other night with Bridget Nielsen, which
I was going to say
great.
the one with Bridget Nielsen was brilliant because I mean, she was so enthusiastic.
Yes.
And in the end, I think I turned around and told her to calm down. It's just there's things that I did that afterwards I thought that's very funny that I've said that to her.
Yeah.
You know? Just calm down.
The American guests are always a bit OTT on this. This is great.
Like, you know, that's just in terms of playing with status. That is all over the place. That she's basically a Hollywood superstar, and I'm this little twat burger van telling her to calm down like a fucking teacher. It's really, there's lots of very funny layers there. And of course, the other one that really stands out was David Guest, R.I.P.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things where I had one of those nights after that where I went, well, a few moments afterwards, I was like, oh, bloody hell, man, that was a bit much. Because I went over because he was on with Ben Miller, and they were sat either side of Ulrika Johnson. I went over to Ben and threatened him and said, listen, you know, she's my girl. Don't you go anywhere near her or else there'll be trouble, you know. And I walked back towards my desk. And then on my way back, Bob said to me, why didn't you say anything to David, Angelos? And I just turned around and said, well, look at him. And it was very funny. But I did have one of those moments afterwards where I go, oh, what a horrible thing to say. But anyway, afterwards in the green room, David Guest, manager, came up to me and said, David thinks you're very funny and wondered if you wanted to pitch an idea of a show of you and him doing a travel log around Britain together. And I'm like, yeah, maybe.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
Never came off. Never came off.
That would have been incredible.
Idea in the green room. Yeah. Bloody hell.
So you did 3 series of Shooting Stars, and the next thing you did with Jim, which a lot of people might not have seen because it was on children's television, was the Ministry of Curious Stuff.
Yeah.
As Captain Lengthwit.
That's right. Yeah. That was actually quite full on because it was, we had 2, I don't know how many episodes we did a series. It was something like 10, I think.
Yeah.
And we filmed them in 2 weeks in a studio in Elstree. I think Elstree and Twickenham. And we were it was literally like start the camera rolling at 9, stop the camera rolling at 7.
Wow.
And you barely leave this studio and you're just banging out this stuff moment after moment after moment. And it came out very well, I think. And it was good fun to do, obviously. And, you know, Jim's brilliant. But it was hard work doing that. But it was, I think, I don't know how well it went down or what anyone thought, but it was a sort of unusual children's TV show.
Yeah, it slipped under the radar, I think. It's co-written by Steve Burge, isn't it, who was obviously involved with Tony Way and Rhys Thomas in the early days.
Yeah, he wrote it, didn't he? He wrote bits of that. He's just done a nice show for Apple.
How was he?
Yeah. A big deal.
And there's a lot of kids, you know, that's been hard working days. Lots of Jack Carroll and
Jack Carroll was in it,
and Tiger.
Yes, Tiger, Drew
Honey.
Drew Honey, that's right.
They're lovely kids, really, really cool. Jack's gone on to do, you know, well with the stand-up and all the rest of it. He was a comedy obsessive.
Yeah.
At the age of 14, when I was doing that with him, he just knew every comedy routine. He got every DVD, he just watched it obsessively. And so it's not surprising that he's now doing it himself. He was supporting Frankie Boyle the other day.
Yes, that's right.
Very cool.
I was on a comedy writing course with him a few years later, and he was probably still in his teens, I expect. But he's one of those you just think, he'll probably go on to do something.
Yeah. He's got a thing. He's got he's got a unique perspective on the world.
Yeah.
Good lad.
It was a great double act, I think, you and Vic in Ministry of Curious Stuff.
Yeah, it's good fun, man.
There's some good stuff you wrote for the two of you.
Well, a lot of that was improvised. You know, we had. They would say, and then there's a big holes in the script where it goes, Dan and Jim will improvise, and we just, oh God. So we'd have to go over to the props table and just pick some stuff out and go, right, what can we do with this? And, you know, but you wouldn't have it. I mean, at the time when you're sort of presented with it, you're like, oh man. But then of course, when you're doing it, you go, well, this is really satisfying because it's working and it's funny and it's just more, it's much more sort of, it's much more fresh and spontaneous than having to do jokes off of the script, which for some reason, when you come up with jokes and you write them down, is great. But then you have to find a way of delivering them in the moment that sounds like you're saying it for the first time, and that can be a tricky thing to do. So to be able to improvise and come up with your own thing, then it's cool because the other person doesn't know what you're going to say, basically, and that's where the real sort of gold nuggets sort of come. Yeah.
Well, Jim will just stick his false teeth out.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, I spent like 2 series with the false teeth in the whole time. Nearly gave me a massive headache every day, crunching my jaw. But mind you, between that and Angelos, 3 hours of recording Angelos and Shooting Stars, like I wore these glasses when I did Shooting Stars for Angelos. I couldn't see out of at all, so I just had these headaches all the time, sticking my jaw out. And the next day after filming, I'd wake up going, God, I feel terrible. And, you know, I didn't occur to me that it's because I couldn't see and I was like, you know, doing that, giving myself headaches. But there we go. Anything for the art.
Yeah. And then in 2012, there was a pilot episode. I assume it was just a pilot and it was going to meant to be a series. Lucky Sexy Winners, which is still the strangest title.
No, it was at the time. It was a strange title, Lucky Sexy Winner. I played a Viking lord, didn't I, in that one, like doing the scores.
Yeah, your full title, I've got it written down here, was, the Warrior King of Helstraton, the Keeper of the Secret Bone, John Morang.
That's John Morang, that's it. Morang I played. Yeah, there you go. So I wanted to play John Morang. He had this very lofty title, but I wanted to play him like a Surbiton real ale drinker.
Yeah.
You know, just very suburban and hello there, very nice. Just happened to kill people. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was obviously a Shooting Stars by another name. I don't know if was it ever discussion of that becoming a series or?
Well, you don't get to have those discussions. That's like the channel discuss those things. And you're not part of those discussions. They'll just sort of, you'll do your pilot or whatever. I think it wasn't billed as a pilot. It was billed as something else. And they'll just sort of go away and then, you know, you won't hear anything or things will just get swept under the carpet. So you never really, it's all very vague, all of that sort of stuff. There was no mention of a series. I don't think it was ever intended for that.
And of course, a couple of years later, that came House of Fools, which is
House of Fools, man,
a thing of beauty.
That's one of the funniest shows ever put on television. House of Fools.
Yeah,
but the not the issue, but the thing about Vic and Bob is that they have a very core, sort of hardcore following of about 700,000 viewers. And so on BBC Two now, I think you need about 1 million for it to keep going, and they were sort of weren't quite getting that. So it only got 2 series. Yeah, it's Christmas special, I think, but God, it was funny. It was a very funny show.
Well, it looks great. I mean, for your multicam studio audience sitcom, you had obviously more mainstream ones like Mrs. Brown Boys at the time, Miranda, Citizen Khan. I think Not Going Out might have been out at the time, but there's not been one as more subversive, surreal one since probably Father Ted, I expect.
Yeah,
So I think it's in good company.
Chris Morris likened it to the Goons, which basically it was. Yeah. It was a lot like that. You know, basically, and also I like the non-ambiguity with the title. It was a house of fools, a house of idiots, and just sort of mucking around, and the plots were sort of paper thin, but it was all just sort of characterization and daft, silly, silly characters. But it was brilliant fun, really, really good fun, and doing that stuff in front of the live studio audiences was really, it was brilliant. What a great show! I don't know what else to say about it. It's just, it was just funny, great characters, and yeah, I think it's a massive hit.
Yeah. Was that one of the first times you worked with like Morgana Robinson and Matt Berry?
No, I'd worked with Morgana before, and I'd met Matt a few times. I don't know what I'd done with Matt before, but I'd met him. He'd been on Shooting Stars, actually. He played Vangelis.
Yeah,
Shooting Stars. That's right.
Of course.
I can't remember where else I'd met him, but he's just been around the comedy circuit, so
yeah,
I would have bumped into him at various points. But yeah, very funny. And that voice has just got him all the way to Hollywood.
It really has, hasn't it?
And that sounds unfair. It's like it's not just the voice, but that voice is.
Well, no, it helps.
Spectacular. Yeah,
it helps. But I mean, how did Bosch come about? Did he come to you fully formed, or did they kind of give you a rough outline?
They wanted me to play this bloke that had just come out of prison, so he had to be pretty hard and sort of pretty, But it's hard keeping that up, It's hard just being like, just hard, and so you have to find other ways of doing it and find other ways of being funny and all the rest of it. So yeah, it started one thing and sort of became something else, really. And no one said anything, so yeah, just cracked on. Yeah, and you twat seems to be the what's in your bag and you twat are the things that get shouted at me quite a lot.
Do you get people asking you to call them a twat?
Yeah. I do those memos. Those memo things. Those those video messages, and it says, "Can you call my husband a twat?" Yeah, you twat. Oh.
Yes. No, I don't have a preference on the two Bosches. I think they're both two great characterizations.
Yeah.
I think the second one had the best wardrobe.
Yeah, he had a good wardrobe, didn't he? Yeah. Weird.
And you did some great slapstick, especially in that second series when you're with Morgana in the bistro. Bistro next door.
Jump over bars and get fallen, punch through windows and all sorts of things. Yeah.
Great. You enjoy that?
Oh, I loved it. Love falling over.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, no, but you're very physical. You're very physical and visual. In what you do. So I mean, obviously you're a fan of slapstick. I would assume, sort of going back.
No, I've got two small children, and we were sat down, one 7-year-old, me, and my 3-year-old, the other day watching Vic and Bob smash each other over the head with pans, and we were all laughing our heads off. Yeah. So I think it's very important to use your body when you can, and there's nothing like running into a lamppost and falling over and smashing. The bigger the better, the thing I enjoyed the most, I think, was when I chucked the banister through the window in the end of series 1, I think it was, of Shooting Stars, and very deadpan.
House of Fools.
House of Fools,
yeah.
In a very deadpan way. I enjoyed that very much. But I mean, I do. I've added a lot more physicality into Angelos on stage as well now, because you think, it's made for it, really. He's really he can pull some funny old shapes and funny old faces and moves and stick his belly out and all sorts, So it really does add a load of stuff to the performance. That's what I like about doing Angelos, is because he's my character, and he can just expand into any way that I want. If I now decide he's this sort of person, he can become this sort of person. That's the beauty of doing your own characters, I suppose.
Yeah, well, no, he has his own backstory. which I love about a lot of character comedians. There is a backstory, and as a fan, you become acquainted with the backstory.
You're sort of forever changing your backstory depending on the situation that you're in. You know, my backstory that I do on the podcast with Alex changes from minute to minute. You know, we've been brain surgeons, accountants, and we've worked for everybody, and we're friends with everybody. It's great though, you know, and basically we're just lying to each other for half an hour. So that, you know, that's the fun of it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. I was being a fan though. You know, obviously we've got Barry and Margaret and all his kids and the grandchildren and
the family.
Yeah, it's all part of it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Extended family. Reference points. But now we've got a load of celebrity reference points. Elton John, Leo Sayer, Kim Woodburn, you know,
David Van Dyke's taking a beating.
He features heavily. Yeah, I don't know why or how that's happened, but I think Ross Kemp's going to be the latest gang.
Nice.
Right.
He's a good addition, Ross Kemp.
Adding to the stable.
Come up with a characteristic for him, how we see him, you know, an attitude.
That's the thing. Is there much? Do you discuss much before starting a podcast, or do you just go straight into it?
We just press record and off we go. And then if I say something about Ross Kemp, Alex or I or one of us might say, well, you know what he's like, don't you? And then you chuck it to the other person, and they have to come up with his personality. And then you have to go, oh yeah, I know, well, he can be that way, you know? And then you're sort of creating Ross Kemp's character live on a podcast, and it's, you know, and it's just all spontaneous. But what a laugh to do that.
He's going back into acting, Ross Kemp, isn't he? I saw a trailer on TV last night.
So all the more reason to mention it on the podcast. Yeah.
What a way to make a living, hey Dan?
Exactly. Part of a living, anyway. Not much money in podcasts.
So how did the acting side come about? Because you've done so much stuff other than the comedy stuff. Was it just literally you got offered roles?
It's interesting because, you know, if you play someone like Angelos, it's you normally get stuck in that because it's people just can't see you as anything else, you know. But I've kept, ever since my sort of big old splash in about 2009 to 2011, 12, something like that, I've kept Angelos fairly low key, so that I can go out and I can do lots of live stuff, but it means I'm not just known for Angelos.
Yeah.
And if I'm not just known, if Angelos was all over the telly, I think it'd be hard for me to get other acting jobs.
Stuff, yeah.
So I keep Angelos live, and then occasionally I might pop up on TV and do something, and then it allows me to do straight acting, which I've done quite a lot of that. I played PC David Rathband last year and The Hunt for Raoul Moat, which was a pretty big story. And I played a scientist, James Cairns, in the Litvinenko story as well. And so, yeah, I mean, and if I was all over the TV with Angelos, there's no way that I would be able to do that, because that would be like asking Al Murray to, you know, to step into some of those roles, you know, with his sort of background of the pub landlord. And people do get nervous and jittery and think, oh no, the public will only see him as that, and they won't accept it another way. So you've got to be a little bit careful. But I think I've managed to get the balance sort of just right.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't see Barry Humphries, for example, playing many straight parts because everyone's saying,
well, he used to.
That's
the thing. He used to. Barry Humphries. He's a brilliant actor, and he was in lots of sort of decent films when he was a younger man.
Yeah.
But as he got older, and you know, Dame Edna and Les Patterson sort of took over, then that was it. You know, he's doing that, and why not? I mean, they're just like the best comedy characters ever written.
Yeah. But I mean, you've played a few sort of hard men, Dan. There's not a lot of romantic leads in your.
No, it's mostly hard men, and I get killed quite a lot as well. I think I've been killed about 7 times, poisoned, beaten up.
Yeah. Going back to Vic and Bob, one thing that comes up with everyone we talk to really is the glove, which I know there were some photos emerged online of a table read with yourself. Do we know anything else? Any movements on that?
Do you know, I don't know about that. I was actually contracted to do it a year ago, but I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard from them about it. I could text Jim and ask him.
I'm free
live on the podcast.
You just sort of think, well, just let them come. With any
when they're ready.
You don't want to ever be going, what's happened to that project? You just have to let things go, and then if they come back round, then they come back round. But I mean, it was all like, it all seemed to be, all systems go for that a year ago. So I don't know what's happened. It'll be. I mean, that's the thing with independent films. It can be 100 things that stops these things happening. And it might even be that Jim and Bob don't know why it's not. What's happened to it, because they did have funding, and they had producers on board and all sorts. So who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
And they seem content.
Play a nice part in it as well. So yeah.
I said they seem content either fishing or painting at the moment. Anyway.
Well, Jim's always wanted to paint.
Yeah,
he's always. That's his first love. He's an artist.
Oh, he's so talented. It's crazy.
Yeah, he really is. And his whole comedy was based on art, I don't think he knew any other comedians.
And
it was all just his idea of what comedy was, and it just happened to chime with lots of people. But yeah, I mean, he's always painted, and he gets a lot of pleasure out of that. And I think he just prefers doing that now than to performing. So yeah, I think that's him for forevermore now, painting whatever. I know he spends a lot of time up in the studio doing that. So why not?
Yeah.
I can't.
Fingers crossed it sees the light of day eventually.
Well, I hope so. It's really funny script. I mean, it's really funny. Really funny. So it should do. But I don't know.
Well, if some reason it doesn't come off, at least they should publish that script so we can all see it.
They should. Yeah.
Go back to Angelos briefly. So I've been watching a couple of episodes of Shooting Stars ahead of this. He's got some moves, hasn't he? I mean, can you still throw down the lino and
Probably.
Was that those days gone?
Probably. I think I probably could. He probably could pull out the breakdancing moves. He's been on his back or on his head or something. I did that, didn't I, once?
Yeah, I think whether you got on your head on purpose or it just ended up on your head. But
I remember I could do a breakdancing move, and I think I once showed it to Bob. He said, well, the Angelos has got to do that, man. Start the show with it. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, wicked.
I loved it when you sort of came out of characters or he did an impression or did something like that, and that was the only glimpse to the general public who didn't know that, oh, hang on, this might be somebody else behind this character.
He's got skills.
Yeah.
I would like it when Angelos has got skills, Like in the latest show that I'm doing, or the live stuff I'm doing, I do a genuine mind reading trick. And it's really good. Brings the house down. Yeah, but it's very it's very un-Angelos, and it's very you're not expecting it. Yeah. So when it actually comes off at the end, it's like, oh, right, fuck. Okay, cool. And It's a lovely surprise. It's really good. Really good. 10 out of 10.
You're into Clinton Baptiste territory there.
Yeah, well, I did a gig with him the other day, his show, and he says, how did you do that? How did you do that mind reading trick? I said, well.
If you're nicking it.
You like to know, I said. Magic circle, son.
Do you have a process for writing for Angelos, or is it literally just go for it? Do
you know what? The only bit of the process is, the hardest bit is just sitting down and actually starting the process.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You've got to just sit down and you've got to go, right, I've got to come up with some Angelos stuff now. And that's, it's a commitment. It's a commitment. But no, not really. Not really. You just have to just it's trial and error, and it's like sometimes jokes just come to you, and other times you got to go and find them, seek them out, and and you got to have jokes as well. Like Angelos will give me 5 minutes on stage of just being sort of strange or unusual, but then you've got to be funny and you've got to have punchlines, otherwise you won't make any money. Yeah.
No, that's the nice thing about what you do with Alex. You're so different, but you have a very similar mindset.
Yeah, we are, but it's that's the thing. That's the one sort of place you go, well, we're not on a stage, and we are literally just talking to each other. So we can just sort of improvise and just make, it's not so punchline heavy. You don't have to have bits where the audience are going to go, ha. You can just, it's an atmosphere and a tone and a feeling really, rather than joke, set up joke. And it's pointless trying to even do that. It's just because it blocks the flow, and it means you're trying too hard. And what it's got to feel like is literally you're not trying at all. And I think we do that quite successfully.
The comedy just comes from the characters, doesn't it?
Yeah, basically. And then I always love listening to it, and then listening to the noises we make when the other one's talking. So if Alex is talking like that, I'm going, and that makes me laugh just as much as anything else.
And Alex corpsing is fantastic.
Great fun, yeah, I love it. I like corpsing as well. It's great. It's because they're genuine. It's not genuine laughter. It's genuine fun,
So he's in an episode of House of Fools, isn't he? Doesn't he?
Yeah, he is. He wears a Hawaiian dress,
sort of tribal dress, isn't it?
Hula skirt. Yes.
Yeah. Is he an actor who's in the wrong show or something from a neighbouring set?
Something like that. Yeah. I can't remember what he was, but it was something like that. Yeah.
So that's been fantastic, Dan. Thanks for
Thank you very
joining
much
us.
for having me. Yeah.
One thing I just wondered, if Angelos was here today, what he would have to say about his time working with Vic and Bob.
What a total colossal waste of time. I could have done it all myself, and they have ridden on the back of my coattails for too long now, actually. So it's time for me to jettison them and go my own way. Okay? So there you have it. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Angelos. Thank you, Dan. Thanks for joining us. It really was quite a boast.
Quite a boast.
Quite a boast.
All righty.
Cheers, Dan.
See you later. Bye-bye. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you all for listening to this edition of Quite a Boast. Special thanks to Matt Lucas for permission to use the Peanuts music as our theme tune, and thanks to Ed Lewis for this edit. Thank you to Jake Chesham for permission to use the photo from his 1995 shoot of Jim and Bob in our various online locations for the podcast. And of course, thank you very much to Jim Moyer and Bob Mortimer, without whom this podcast, well, it just wouldn't exist, would it? Remember to check out Paula's Divine Comedians podcast as well, and to join the Reeves and Mortimer Depository of Curious Stuff Facebook group.